Hello, friend. This is Ryan Hicks of theresellermindset.com. And for this Reseller Friday, I want to talk to you about why raising your ASP or average sales price will not fix your reselling business. Many people get a hold of this idea that, well, I should need to raise my ASP. And for those of you who are new to reselling, ASP means average sales price. It is the average price you're getting per sale. So let's say, for example, you have 1,000 sales in a month and you have $20,000 in sales. That would give you an average sales price of $20. Now, I'm not going to go into how eBay bakes in the shipping cost you get if you had any shipping costs that the buyer paid into your average sales price, because that creates a whole mess. So just going for the easy, understandable math here. This is not going to be exact because we're not dealing with exact specific situations. I'm just trying to give you an overview of the concept. So you might be happy with $20 per sale on average. That might be good for you. But what if you raised it to $30? You could still sell 1,000 items, but get $30,000 in sales instead. Well, some of the issues that arise from this is as you ramp up the average sales price, sometimes there can be, if you're selling clothing, for example, there can be authentication issues that come up. You might need to pay some money to get some things verified as being authentic and not fakes. You don't want to be a person who goes on Facebook Marketplace and buys a Rolex for $50 and then tries to sell and get yourself banned on eBay because you're selling a fake Rolex. So average sales price getting ramped up is great, but you need to make sure the items are authentic. You need to make sure they're high quality. Sometimes as you ramp up the sales price, you will also get a more demanding clientele. Now, I found sometimes it's the opposite, where the cheaper items, you get more problems from people, more complaints, more nitpicking, but sometimes you can have a little more picky clientele, meaning they might demand a little bit more. They might want it to be perfect. And maybe if you're selling pre-owned clothing, for example, maybe the pair of pants you're selling is a little distressed. It might be perfectly fine to wear, but if it's a higher price item, maybe that turns off your clientele as you ramp up the sales price. These are all things you have to know. Sometimes people just go out and they buy more expensive, higher quality items that will sell for a higher dollar amount, and they just have those things sitting in their store rotting away. And they're generally paying more money per item to get these more expensive items, because why would they be buying the lower dollar items if they're paying the same price? So they're generally paying more to get these higher quality items with the higher average sales price. But sometimes they sit there just like the low quality stuff does. If you don't know exactly what you're doing, you don't know the exact pricing, you're not familiar with this type of item, or maybe the quality item, you don't know exactly what the clientele that buys that item is looking for, you might just have more higher quality items sitting in your store that nobody wants. You can also run into the issue where there might be a smaller base of clientele for these higher dollar items. You can go and check sell-through rate, which is very important, of course. You should be checking sell-through rate for everything anyway, or at least have a working knowledge of the sell-through rate for that item that you're buying. Because if you're going to resell it, it needs to sell quickly. I can get items all the time for dirt cheap that have a resell rate of years. I wouldn't take those items for free because they're going to just sit around, and then I'm basically just storing stuff for what? The labor has to be put into creating the listing, taking pictures of the item, doing all this stuff to create a listing for somebody that nobody even wants it, or at least it's going to take years potentially to sell. That's a complete waste of time and money. Even if you pay nothing for the item, it's worth nothing to you because you shouldn't be wasting your time listing that item in the first place. But just because the item has a higher sales price does not magically mean it's going to sell quickly. You can get high dollar, valuable items that are quality items that nobody wants or very few people want. And sometimes you find as the dollar price goes up, the potential market goes down. Now, it depends on the item. If you're selling iPhones, well, if you're selling a 10-year-old iPhone, there may not be as much demand. It doesn't matter about the price. But if you're selling a brand new iPhone the latest current model and you're selling it for $100 under the going market rate, you're going to sell that thing instantly because there's a huge demand for it. Doesn't matter what the price is. That's a high dollar item and people are willing to pay it all day long, especially if they get a deal on it. So you have to do your research. Just buying an item because it has a great sales price. And I've seen people get tricked by stores sometimes. They go into a store, they see an item, say clothing, for example, and it's new with tags. And the tag says $89.50. Ooh, this thing's worth $89 and they're only selling it for $5? This is a great deal. Perhaps it could be. But you still need to do the research if you don't know that brand, because you'll find oftentimes there's tens of thousands of clothing brands out there, and many of them will put these price tags on there, making it look like it's more valuable than it really is, and there is zero demand for it. It doesn't matter if the price tag says $16,000, no one's going to pay for it even at $1. No one wants it. At the rate of these companies, fashion brands coming out, there's basically almost an unlimited, infinite amount of clothing brands and clothing items going out in the marketplace each and every day. And it does not mean that they're valuable because they have a MSRP that seems high, because they might not sell for anything. You know, I remember years ago, a clothing brand, for example, Robert Graham. I like Robert Graham. I wear a lot of Robert Graham clothing. And if you go to the store and buy a polo shirt, for example, Robert Graham, it might cost you a couple $100. But resale, you go on eBay right now, I'm talking about current price. It could go way up through the roof. It could go down even further. You're lucky maybe if you're getting about $20 to $30 range for those items. Now that's still good if you're getting the item for a low enough price, but that's a huge discrepancy between the retail price and what you're actually going to be able to sell it for if it is pre-owned. Now, if it's new, you're still not going to get anywhere near $200. You might be getting more like $60 or $70. But because there's such a huge amount of pre-owned Robert Graham clothing on eBay, for example, and Poshmark, for example, there might not be a huge demand for your new item when somebody can pay half or a third of that price for the same item that's pre-owned and looks great. So this whole idea of raising your average sales price is great. It is something you should do, but you need to have a great diligent plan about it to know for sure this item I'm buying is not just checking one check mark in my checklist of higher priced. It could sell for a higher price, because that does not mean anything if there's no one to buy it. So you need to make sure you keep doing the work. Don't just think because an item is worth more potentially that there's a corresponding demand for it, because there may not be. And there may actually be a demand that goes down the higher price, especially if it's pre-owned, because if they're going to be paying $50, $60 for a shirt that's pre-owned, why not just pay the $100 and get a brand new one? So these are all things you have to work out and figure out so you can improve your reselling business, but don't just get lured down this trap of buying more expensive items thinking that's going to fix your problem. Walmart sells things at very low cost. They have very slim margins, and they're one of the largest companies in the world. You can sell low-priced items. You don't have to have a huge average sales price to make a lot of money. You can sell more in volume if you want. There are all kinds of ways to run your reselling business, but I just want to make sure that you're always diligent about checking and researching and understanding the potential sales price and the potential sell-through rate of the item so you can make the best sales possible and become the greatest reseller possible. I pray this is a blessing for you. May God bless you richly.